Chris, great to have you on here. And we called you as soon as we could when we saw the article you put out with Ken Rosenthal about the Yankees' interest in Edward Cabrera, but they're not the only ones. What else can you tell us?
Yeah, so the Yankees do have interest in Edward Cabrera with the Marlins, as Ken and I reported yesterday. A couple of other teams are also in the mix, the Mets and the Cubs. But last month at the winter meetings, Brian Cashman told reporters that he would, quote, love to add another starting pitcher. As you guys probably know, and everybody watching, the Yankees are going to be without Garrett Cole, Carlos Rodon, and Clark Schmidt to begin the season as they recover from their respective elbow surgery. So the Yankees rotation right now is pretty thin, and that's not even mentioning, the guys that they currently have on their rotation who are coming off of career highs in workloads. Max Fried, Rodon is one of those guys too, Will Warren and Cam Schlittler. So the Yankees are definitely in the hunt for a starting pitcher. Cabrera is one of them, and Ken and I also reported in that same article that they are still talking to the Milwaukee Brewers about Freddy Peralta.
Have they come off any of their previous statements from previous off seasons or even trade deadlines of can't have Spencer Jones, can't have Jasson Domínguez? Because each year that these players don't have the all-star season, does it make them less valuable to other teams or less valuable to the Yankees where they could trade them? Have there been any words on those types of players and their other prospects?
Well, they've had previous discussions about both of those guys at trade deadlines and off seasons, Domínguez and Jones. They also remain in the mix to re-sign Cody Bellinger. And if they re-sign Bellinger to a long-term contract, one of those guys is likely going to be out of the picture. It wouldn't be a surprise at all to see either Domínguez or Jones get traded. I probably would not think that either of those guys would be included in a possible Cabrera deal. But, with Peralta being a frontline starter, it would not be a surprise at all to see either Domínguez or Jones in a package to land Peralta. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I would not be stunned at all if one of those guys is not in the Yankees organization by the start of spring training.
Wow, that's a big thing. But what about a free agent? The Yankees haven't. When are the Yankees going to make a splash in free agency? Hal Steinbrenner said they have no money, and they haven't gone out and gotten a Tucker or a Bellinger or anybody. I know they've re-signed some of their guys, but when are they going to make that Yankee splash? Because they're one of the teams that hasn't really made a splash that we expect to.
Yeah, I mean, the Athletic paid for me to go to Orlando, and I had nothing to really write about.
You didn't even say hi. You didn't even say hi. You didn't even say hi to us.
I'm sorry. Next time. But yeah, I mean, the Yankees are the only American League East team to not make a notable external addition this offseason. They've seen the Blue Jays get much better. They just signed Okamoto over the weekend. They remain in the mix to sign Kyle Tucker. But yeah, I mean, the Yankees are, their main priority, which is what they've been saying publicly, is to re-sign Cody Bellinger. They've not made that a secret. If they add one of these starters in Cabrera or Peralta, I think that would be a really nice move for the Yankees, but it's probably not satisfactory to, the Yankee faithful. They are hoping that they get much better from what they were this past season. And, they got eliminated in the ALDS by the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays had their number all season. You would think that the Yankees would try to make bigger moves, but one thing that they've been very clear about basically since the season ended, both Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone, is they think this roster is good. They have the same record as the Blue Jays. Do I think that they're as good as the Blue Jays? I don't, but, I'm not getting paid to make those kinds of decisions. They feel like they have a good roster, and we'll see if they're correct in 2026.
Does the didn't even really push hard on Imai, is it more indicative of who they're actually going after for starting pitching, or more about what Imai was going to bring to the table? And because the price really wasn't that high, and I thought he was probably, if they thought he was the big fish for them, as Cashman has said before, our white whale, then they would have gone after him and gotten him based on how much pitching they're going to need for the first 3 months of the season.
Well, I think the industry said what they thought of Imai with that contract that he signed. I certainly thought that he was going to get more money than what he ended up signing with the Astros, 30 years, $63 million. I did have multiple people with the Yankees early in the offseason express their interest in Imai. Obviously, they ended up not feeling similarly at the end when it came time to sign him before his posting window expired. But I definitely thought that it was a worthy person for them to go after, especially considering the price. If he can realize his potential, that's a steal for Houston. And, it's definitely, that organization has done a really good job of developing pitching over the past several years now. But I was certainly surprised that they didn't go after Imai. But if they end up getting a Cabrera or Peralta, both of those guys have shown that they can do well on the major league level. We have no idea what Imai is going to look like. Obviously, we have some idea just with how advanced the data is now over in Japan. But I was definitely very, very surprised that they ended up passing on him, especially at the number that he signed at.
Okay, you brought up Jasson Domínguez, and the other big name is Spencer Jones with the Yankees. Which one of these do you think they find more valuable? Jasson Domínguez has gotten some at-bats in the big league. Spencer Jones hasn't really gotten that opportunity. So which one of these do you think the Yankees find more valuable and would be more reluctant to trade for a player that they might desperately need, like you said, because their rotation is thin at the moment?
I've heard mixed reviews from their own organization regarding Spencer Jones. So just that alone, I would imagine that they feel that Domínguez has more value long-term. Also, you have to take into account that Domínguez is only 22 years old and he already has major league experience. He didn't have the season that I think many people expected him to have. He went into the year with a starting role basically guaranteed in left field. We did not know that Trent Grisham was going to end up having the season that he had, and he ended up taking Domínguez's playing time essentially with him in center and then moving Bellinger to left field. So we didn't expect that, but he was still a slightly above league average hitter this past season, Domínguez. So I think he certainly has potential. He obviously has to get better defensively. He was a disaster in left field, one of the worst overall outfielders defensively this past year. Like if he doesn't get better, then you wonder just where he's going to fit long term. But with him being 22, Spencer Jones being 25, striking out nearly 33% of the time in the minor leagues this past season, I think it's pretty obvious that Domínguez has more value long term.
Bo Bichette, the Yankees have said that they were talking to him or have reached out. Is that more of a make sure the next team, the Blue Jays, or if the Red Sox have to pivot to him, pay the most? Or is it something that there could be a fit with other things moving around if Bo Bichette were to sign with the Yankees?
Well, if Bellinger is their number one priority, I do not think that they would be getting both Bellinger and Bichette. It would be likely that Bichette would be a backup option if Bellinger goes elsewhere, which I am not expecting. I do think that eventually the Yankees and Bellinger will agree to a new deal. But I've heard that the Yankees' interest in Bichette is really not even that solidified. Yes, they've checked in. The one thing I will say about checking in on free agents is it is the job of the general manager to check in on everybody that's out there. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily 100% interested in that player or going to sign them. But, Brian Cashman is not doing his due diligence if he doesn't check in to see where Bichette's market is, which teams might be interested. But, as of today, I don't think that the Yankees and Bichette is a realistic possibility.
Okay, we got to ask about the scouting director or the international, Edgar Mateo, getting dismissed so close to the international signing, what do they call it? Deadline or opening or whatever, the window, whatever it's called right now, right? The period. Yeah, good point, Scott. Period. Yeah. But is this a big deal for the Yankees? Are they looking to go in a different direction? Why do you make this move? You had a whole year basically to do this. Why are they making this move so close to the period?
Yeah, so Edgar was the assistant to Donnie Roland. They got rid of Donnie Roland a few weeks ago now. Donnie had been in the organization for over a decade. But, if you go through the Yankees international free agents in the past several years now, there have been numerous multi-million-dollar misses with the Yankees. They just haven't really executed that portion of their organization as well as they have hoped. Domínguez has been their best international signing, and the jury's still out on what kind of player Domínguez might be. They gave $5 million to Roderick Arias a few years ago, and he doesn't look like he's going to be the kind of player that they thought he would be. So if you go through just, on Baseball America, some of the dollar figures that they have given out over the past several years, there are not many hits for the Yankees. They've signed Carlos Lagrange, who's now one of their top pitching prospects. I believe he got like $10,000 a few years ago. They've hit on some of those guys, like the lower level guys, but when you're talking about international free agency, especially for a team like the Yankees, who's never drafting high in the draft, you have to make sure like that part of your organization is as well as it can be, and it's not. So that's why the Yankees are now in the market for a director of international and an assistant director. As you mentioned, they got rid of Edgar a few days ago, but the timing's not great because the international free agency period opens on January 15th. A few weeks ago, they lost their number one guy. I do not know how to pronounce his last name, Wandy, Asigen, to the Mets. I think he signed for $3.6 million. I know several people in the Yankees organization were very high on his potential, but those are the things that happen when you do make those moves. You look at college football, when coaches go elsewhere, some of those players end up hitting the transfer portal. So it's no different here with international free agency.